Oh shoot. Got it. Now I have to turn this back on.
Yeah,
Okay. Here we go.
that's the
All right.
best millennial pause we've had yet. That's exactly how I want every podcast to start, with Andrew going, "Oh shoot, I, I got there's steps to this."
It's not counting yet. Is it supposed to be?
No, we have a thing.
Okay.
It will start. We'll let you know. We got to
Gotcha.
do a thing. It's sort of a
Yeah.
preamble because we have a new person on, but you're not new. You're actually a returning guest.
So
Am I
you
the
remember the
first
rules.
returning guest?
Yeah, actually you are. Yeah, we have a returning guest today. So
Yeah, we have a returning guest.
and you remember the rules, right? We start the timer and then once the timer ends, we wrap it up. So
Yeah,
I,
you
I
wrap it
mean,
up.
I think. I mean, you had the idea of the timer before, but I don't think we actually. I couldn't see one.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
But now you can see it. So
Yeah.
I do want to say my voice is shot at the moment. I went to a like I do. I went to a noise rock concert last night, and then I just screamed in one of the monitors for a while,
Sure.
and then it just screamed back at me. It felt good. It was great. It was a really positive experience. It was really good.
Sounds like and I unfortunately couldn't go with you, but I definitely want to go to a concert with you sometime so we can experience it together.
Yeah, we got to. I want to take you to, like, listen. There's like 3 or 4 concerts there, dude. In New York, Clowncore is playing, and
Oh, yeah. All
yeah,
right, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that.
they're so good and such jerks. So Marshall's back, and he's actually back for a reason. Andrew, what's the reason?
Well, we just put out a new release. We talked about it last week, Illegal Scam Hold Music, and we were honored to have the project directed by Mr. Marshall B Garrett.
I'm dancing, but this is an audio medium, so probably.
So
This will be posted online. We will see.
Amazing. So good.
I think this is a conversation we had last time that you will be seen. Moving forward, we have to bring up the fact that they will see you, so don't go nuts.
Okay, great.
There was only one scary moment for that, but now with that knowledge knocked out, yeah. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Brandon.
Start that time.
All right. I'm getting messages on there too.
So
well, oh yeah. We both tried to start at the same time. Okay. So yeah, it really is. I always have a great time working with Marshall. So we might have talked about last time he was on, but I've done several projects with him. I know Brandon, you've worked with him many times as well. So basically, I guess just to sort of introduce the whole thing, we talked a little bit about this last week when it was just Brandon and I, but basically with this project, ended up being a bit bigger than any of the other projects that we've done as Yonko, and of course, like, you know, Marshall, you and I have done quite big projects together, and all three of us have done pretty big projects, so compared to those, this is relatively small, but just as far as like Yonko, this was a much bigger project. And I know the reason that we decided to call you up is because it just got to a point where I knew that if I didn't call you or somebody else, that it just wasn't going to get done because it had gotten to a point where we sort of hit a wall and we weren't able to move it forward anymore. So that's why we brought you in, and it sort of helped keep us on track. And I guess just I'm giving that background just to sort of bring people up to where you got involved. And now I guess I'm curious to hear what your experience was with the project, and what you thought of it when I presented it to you, and along those lines.
Yeah. So I feel like the other preamble, let's take up half the podcast just on preamble, but like the
Right.
other thing is, pretty much all the projects that we've worked on that you've alluded to have been theatrical projects. And
Right.
I think since I went away to grad school, which now is like 10 years ago, it's been harder for us to find those projects. And every now and then you'll be like, hey, I want to work on this thing. Or I'll be like, hey, I want to work on this thing. We should do it together. Yeah. And then it's really hard to do because the way that we figured out how to work together is in theater. And theater has like some built-in deadlines and moments, and it has a flow and it has a structure. But when you brought this one up to me, I was like, I think one of my first questions to you was like, is this a concept album or a radio play or what is this? And you're like, kind of all of those. and
Right.
not really any of those. And I was like, cool, I'm in. Like that was the thing, is it was so weird. And yet I felt like I had a toehold on the thing. Like, I understood when I read the script, and I understood when we were talking about it. And the fact that I understood what the project was without understanding what it was gonna be was
Mhm.
really, really exciting.
Mhm.
And it was just like that kind of great moment where you're like, we're gonna make something, we kind of know how to release it, and we know how to make all the parts of it. And then, like you said, the entire project, I think, ended up being bigger than all of us thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
uh, and like, I felt like I was in a weird spot because you were seeding a lot of the creative vision to me to kind of work through with you, but at the same time, like, it was so squarely your vision. And so it was like, all right, so I need to figure out how to look at this thing, see what Andrew is trying to see, and find out which questions or which actions I need to offer so that it will be as much the Andrew thing as it can be, and more than it could be if Andrew was doing it by himself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and I think because like the things that the projects that we've done before, like you said, are more theatrical, and there is that like structure that's built in. So this was really kind of departing and a completely different avenue, than we had. And I also so I think that you and I were having most of the conversations, but definitely the origin of the idea came from Brandon, and all that. So I think I don't want Brandon to think that I was like telling you that it was all my vision or anything like
Well,
that.
yeah, of course not. I also just like the idea of Marshall having to sit down and be like, how do I become more Andrew than Andrew?
Well, it's more like, how do you turn Andrew into the most Andrew version of himself?
Yeah.
And then it's also like, I don't know, because I'm also hopping onto, like, a lot of the Yonko projects are about meeting Andrew, your musical work, with Brandon, your artistic work.
Mhm.
And like, I knew y'all were having your conversations, but I
Mhm.
wasn't in those because you knew how those worked. And I was just like, oh, okay, I'm trusting that this is going to be the right thing.
Yeah.
And then, like, the other two, like, huge collaborators in this that aren't on the call are, I think, Lisa and Eric, right? and
Mhm.
and so, for the people listening, Lisa Lutwijk wrote the script, and Eric Bostic mixed. Is that the right word for what he did? Or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he mixed and blended everything in. And
And
actually, yeah, we do want to have both of them on
we're gonna
in future
pull
podcasts. Yeah.
we're getting as many episodes out of this
Yeah.
release as we possibly can. So there's gonna be
yeah,
each person's gonna get at least one, maybe
Yeah.
two. We're getting months out.
Yeah, we're gonna stretch this out.
yeah, we'll do
Um,
that. Do that for sure.
but yeah, what you just mentioned, like that was a big part of like why the project was so much bigger, is because the stuff that Brandon and I have been doing, we've basically figured out the way that he and I work together. So when it's just music and just art, we've sort of have this at this point, it's still evolving, of course, but we have this kind of really good pattern going back and forth. And so, the fact that we had a script um, that made a huge addition. It's only one other person, but like it just exponentially, kind of made and because then you've got actors, and then you've got everything, all those uh participants, involved as well.
So speaking of actors, I know we pulled from groups, a lot of people you've worked with a lot of times before. What was it like directing them for sound? Did you treat it differently? Did you treat it the same? Like what was that experience for you?
um yeah, I'm not, yes, and also no.
Okay.
um it was because, like, I have a shorthand, especially with Deb, but also with John and Karen. But then Zach, I'd never worked with before.
Oh, you
And
haven't?
no,
Okay.
I met him the night we started recording.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
think I think Deb recommended him, I want to
Yeah.
say. But it was a bunch of, like, it was a bunch of people that I had varying levels of shorthand, and then somebody I
Mm.
didn't have any. Um, and the thing I reminded myself, I'm not going to credit the which director it is because I can't remember, but one of the directors on The West Wing talked about how sometimes he would get something in 2 takes and sometimes he would get it in 25. And a lot of the actors talked about how they really respected that it wasn't like it was always a 6-take thing, right? It was, we're not going to do 6 takes and then find the best one. It was, we're going to do this until it's right. And so I, like, for a few of these moments, yeah, it was very similar to what we have always done. And for some moments it was like get up in their face and talk to them and work through it and be kind of a person and be, you know, kind of feed. And for others it was like, I'm just going to sit way back and do this. And sometimes it was just like, Andrew has a thought, and like, in my mind, you know, I'm serving the vision that y'all are bringing in. So like, if I'm hearing somebody else in the room talk, it's something I've gotten more comfortable doing, just being like, yes, that's a good idea. Let's just go with that. Like, I don't have to then add my piece to it. Because, you know, especially again with the people that we've worked with a lot, like if you're talking straight to John or Deb, like you've worked with them a zillion times, I don't have to then interpret what you said because they know how to talk to you, you know how to talk to them.
Yeah, and really everyone in there, and actually Zachary was the only person that I really didn't know as well. And I assumed that, but what's interesting about that is that I actually assumed that you did. So I think that because of that, like I sort of had just a natural comfort level with him because I sort of assumed that you already knew him. So I'm actually I'm glad that I made that assumption because otherwise I might have felt, you know, awkward. But because he was a great guy, he was great to work with. But yeah, it's interesting because like with all those people, like they just came in. We had worked together on various projects before and always had really good relationships and everything like that. And they just like boom, you know, sat in. You know, I kind of explained to them this weird idea, and I kind of gave them a little bit of a weird background of like, you know, Yonko aliens and stuff like that. And like they were like they didn't bat an eye. They didn't bat an eye. They were just like, yeah, boom, let's do this thing. You know?
Well, there's something about a short time frame project, like the first Susquehanna Shakespeare show that we did,
Mhm.
you know, the Macbeth that we had, what, like 10 rehearsals or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, we don't have time to like investigate the thing.
Mhm.
And like that's valuable when it's valuable, but sometimes if the idea is weird enough, or you know, with Shakespeare, if the text is hard enough, sometimes the thing is just like, follow the instinct, follow the vibe, don't,
Mhm.
you know, don't overthink it, just say yes to it, right? And
Yeah.
it brings that kind of improv um world of just agreeing to what the thing is,
Mhm.
um that I think was really valuable for this project, because like the script Lisa wrote is so um like responsive, right? And
Mhm.
it's so like, I'm in a situation and I don't quite know what to do with it.
Mhm.
And like I remember John especially came in with a really strong characterization
Mhm.
that um like none of us had talked about or thought about, but then also for us it was like, great, we've got this character, and now
Yeah.
within that, where do we ad lib, where do we build, how does
Yeah.
this character intersect with this script,
Mhm.
and like all of those things, because we were just in that mode of saying yes to each other. I think
Mhm.
it led to some really strong vocal performances.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed that night that we were recording, because we did everything just in one night. I mean, which I mean isn't that surprising in one way because it's a short script, you know. But on the other hand, it can be surprising because, as we all know, I mean, we've all been involved with recordings, and you know, things go wrong, you know. So, but we got everything done in one night, and one of the things I noticed happening, like, because we recorded each character sort of uh all together, all the lines together, even though it's separated, of course. Um, but I noticed that the actors, as we went through it, you know, they started to really embody the characters a lot more. And with the repetition, you know, we were doing, you know, you could see them sort of starting to get into that world. And then that sort of led a little more naturally into the improvisation that they were doing. And we ended up with some really cool, you know, extra lines and you know, little tags that we were able to include, you know, that weren't part of Lisa's original script, but we were able to, you know, incorporate them.
Well, and one of the fun things I thought also was with Tess and the track that she was in,
Mhm.
you know, she's got, you know, this particular training in building emotion through breath. And
Mm,
while while it was great that we could be like, great, you're gonna get like super depressed or super aggressive, and she could just switch it, right?
Mm.
But also we could hear in her breath in the recording, right? We got her close enough to the microphone,
Yeah.
and just hearing her breathe while listening to Deb ended up being one of my favorite little things that came in
Yeah.
the tags, was just like the little sobs and things.
Yeah. And I love that. And actually, I didn't know about her training with that, but that was one of the things that night I was immediately responding to already. And I mean, I remember just sitting there because she was the last one that we recorded. And I mean, there were parts where like, I mean, I was already getting teary-eyed. I mean, just like it was just such an emotional like thing, just and it's like it's not an emotional place, because we're in this like big room, it's like all these wires and everything all around. It's like there's nothing emotional about it, but like as soon as she started speaking, it was like, oh my God, like I could feel it in my heart. So
Well, and we've all worked with our partners, right,
mhm,
in artistically, and for folks who don't know, Tessa's my wife, and there's always like the thing of like checking around the room,
mhm,
because you can't be fully like unbiased about your own partner.
mhm.
And I remember seeing that from you, and I was like, oh, okay, good, this is going the right way,
Yeah.
um because because of how you were responding. And I remember the first actor we were talking about to put in that track ended up not being free to do it, and was a
Mhm.
totally different human than Tess is.
Right.
So the energy just like evolved, the character and all that just evolved with who was playing it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Tessa's track is, of all of them, I think we can kind of agree, the most brutal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Was that difficult or anything, or what? How did you approach that? Because like me and Andrew have talked about working with a spouse and having to be like, yep, we're gonna have to do some dark stuff. Let's do this. What was that like for you? Is having your wife do some pretty heavy stuff? I think we can say.
Yeah, I don't know, like that's kind of a comfort zone for us, I guess. Part of it is that breath thing that I was talking about before, and I knew that she's not necessarily going to an emotional spot,
Mm-hmm.
but that she's able to fabricate it. But also, like, she's played Lady Macbeth for me, so like she's played Lady Macbeth, and like at the first rehearsal, she and Joe were like, all right, let's kiss real quick and make sure, like, let's get that out of the way, and now let's also like kill people and stuff like that. We'd been in some dark place, but it's also not fun to listen to that, right? It's not fun to listen to your spouse cry and be like, no, can you do it like this?
That was very no, but because of sound, you do that all over again. Yeah, do that in front of me again. Yeah, it was great. Thank you. Do you have anything you want to push right now?
Actually,
hear it.
yeah. I kind of vote we keep going. We could split it into 2 episodes if we want to.
Okay. Have 2 episodes. Okay, pause it. We'll split it. Do you have? Okay.